The occasional address tonight is to be delivered by Mr. David Redhill, Partner and Chief Marketing Officer of Deloitte Australia. David has worked in journalism, creative writing, design, marketing, branding, photography and music for over 30 years in Australia, Spain, the US and the UK. In 2011-12, he was recognised by the Australian Marketing Institute as Australian Marketer of the Year, the first time a professional services marketer has won this award. David is currently a partner and Chief Marketing Officer at Deloitte Australia. He is the series editor of Deloitte's white paper series, Building the Lucky Country, Business Imperatives for a Prosperous Australia, and is a member of the firm's Marketing, Brand and Digital Transformation Councils. He's also a member of the Advisory Council to the Faculty of Art and Design here at UNSW. David's stories and images have been published in the Financial Times, the Times of London, The Guardian, Journal of Brand Strategy, Design Week and Creative Review UK, The Australian, the Sydney Morning Herald, The Vanguardia, New York Times, Chicago Tribune, San Francisco Chronicle. You get the story. His documentaries and music have featured on radio in several countries, and his photography has been exhibited in Spain, the UK and Australia. David's awards include a New York Telly for Video Creative Direction and a Gold Quill for Excellence by the IABC. Ladies and gentlemen, Mr. David Redhill.
Deputy Vice-Chancellor Martin, Dean Harley, distinguished guests, graduating students, families. I think I've had the best seat in the House just here for the last half hour or so as I've watched each of you make a personal connection with the Vice-Chancellor as you receive your degree, make that connection and cross a threshold which you've only just begun to realise the significance of. It's a cherished honour to deliver this occasional address to you. When I was invited to do so, I naturally set about investigating what former generations of graduating students most valued in their own ceremonies. So I began by looking into the pantheon of graduation speeches cited as the best ever. Now, many of those seemed to actually contradict each other. Winston Churchill and John F. Kennedy, statesmen like them, businessmen like Steve Jobs, Bill Gates, and artists like J.K. Rowling, Robert De Niro, and Tim Minchin, they all overlapped on their advice to take courage in risk and to make your own luck. But they disagreed on whether to seek mentors or trust your own instincts, to work on your strengths or fix your failings, to go fast or to go slow. So I extended my research to the internet. Cue an avalanche of sober criticism, cryptic insight, wisdom offset by well-meaning platitudes, like the fact that you only have one life. Well, yes, you are limited to one, unless you are a cat. Problem is, not many cats study art and design. I concluded by asking a few colleagues what they actually remembered from their graduation ceremonies. Few recalled what it was actually said, and even fewer remembered who delivered it. So to level expectations, what I'm about to tell you is utterly forgettable. With that out of the way, some reflections on art, design and business, the world where I live. So I work in the world's largest and oldest professional services firm, 170 years young, a global behemoth, 200,000 person, $32 billion monster. My role there as Chief Marketing Officer continues a narrative stretching back 35 years, to a time when I was jamming with avant-garde industrial musicians and anarchists in inner-city squats, painting abstract portraits in oils, taking black and white urban landscapes in photography, and writing feature articles critical of 1980s political apathy, all while studying a Bachelor of Arts. Now, my communications degree was split between theory, music and mass culture, comparative religion, semiology, and pragmatic technical skills like radio and television production, print journalism, and professional writing. So where have those skills taken me? They've taken me to over 50 countries, to Senegal, where I spent an afternoon interviewing and jamming with musician Youssou N'Dour, to Spain, where I was the only foreign photographer at the burial of Salvador Dali, to London and New York, where I worked with some of the world's best creative minds on campaigns seen in every corner of the planet. They took me through San Francisco's .com roller coaster, to see the new economy rise, fall and rise again. They took me way out of my comfort zone once or twice into places of danger. And after leaving Australia in 1985 with a guitar and a suitcase, they brought me home 20 years later with a wife and 3 children. A major upgrade. Now, I owe some of those experiences to my stupidity and ignorance about situations of personal safety and career risk, and others to the luck of someone who looks back gratefully at opportunities that opened up when they did. But most I owe to a tertiary education, which was my ticket to play. It's a ticket that's taken me wherever I've wanted to go. It's still valid, and it always will be. For almost 40 years, I've used those skills that I learned during the 4 years of my degree. The essential ruthlessness of journalism in determining what is important and what is discardable. It frames everything I craft and deliver. The aesthetic instinct I developed in sizing photographs, text and graphics for publications shaped my ability to design today in Keynote, Prezi, Design, InDesign or Photoshop. Radio mixing skills drawn from cutting and splicing tapes by hand helped me create compelling video animations on websites today. And while my role today sees me producing content to engage business and government leaders with narratives about Australia's future, it's confidence in production skills I acquired 3 decades ago that continue to help me to exercise judgment, determine proportion, and land on the right image, word, or idea. Now, I have a hunch that you'll experience the same time lag. Whether you're clearly conscious of it now, or whether it emerges inexplicably from your subliminal mind in 30 years' time, the foundational knowledge you've gained at this university of classical principles in art and design will shape somehow the way you approach things for the rest of your lives. So with that in mind, I'd like to talk for a few minutes about 2 ideas. The first is the relationship between apprenticeship and failure. In his graduation address at Stanford, Steve Jobs talked about failure in the context of love and loss. That being fired by Apple and losing the company he loved filled him with the lightness of being a beginner again and led to the most creative period of his life. In her Harvard speech, J.K. Rowling talked of failure's fringe benefits. As a jobless single parent, failure meant a stripping away of the inessential. It stopped her pretending to herself that she was anything other than what she was. And my own take in failure is shaped by a peculiar definition of career success. Now, as CMO of a big company, I naturally receive a lot of job applications. Many are from people in their early 30s with descriptions of up to 10 previous roles on their resumes. Now, that's not remarkable. Nor is it to read of successful campaigns, restructurings, change management programs, and other initiatives they've led while in positions held for an average of between 12 and 18 months. Now, they may well have actually done all those things, but I just don't believe they're versions of success. Why? Because unless you are a freak, you're rarely any good at something the first time you do it. In my simplistic view, you learn how to do a job the first year. You make your first big mistakes in year 2, and by the 3rd you're improving fast while seeing the impact of your early work. As you apply the lessons of the long-term feedback loop, you get closer to feeling like an expert in something. Author Malcolm Gladwell in Outliers said it takes 10,000 hours to become an expert, and I think that's about right. To get to the point where a skill is instinctive, it doesn't take months, it takes years, even decades. So in each of my 5 stints in journalism, PR, branding, digital and marketing, I started out by failing, and I kept failing until I figured out how to make it work. My higher degree beyond university was a master's in rejection from the School of Hard Knocks with majors in not good enough and try again. Some of you are about to enter that institution. I can only implore you to stay long enough to fail. Really fail. Because when you've weathered the mind-numbing disappointment of getting it wrong big time and having to start again, and when you've experienced the 4 a.m. exhilaration of painstakingly retracing your steps, approaching it differently and getting it right, you'll know that you won't ever get it that wrong again. and that you're on your way to realising your full potential. Now, I'll close with my second idea, why I'm so excited and optimistic about your future. Throughout my 3 decades working in Barcelona, London, San Francisco, Sydney, as a creative or as a suit for telecoms or media companies, newspapers, financial players, creative agencies and professional services firms, I've seen a consistent evidence not just of the growing importance of innovation, design and creative thinking, that's old news, but of people's understanding of why it actually matters. As a result, misfits are becoming mainstream. Contrary to creatives looking for opportunities to ply their trade, institutions are now coming to look for them. Those whom the left-brain corporate masters tolerated as an interesting distraction, but not really relevant to the main game, are now not only becoming the main game, they're rewriting its rules. We, who were once the barbarians at the gates, now have the keys to the kingdom. Now, why is that? It may be that creative and inspiring ways of cutting through the noise and connecting people in communities, businesses and governments to good outcomes are now being seen as the best opportunity to effect positive change. And in contrast to financial investments, acquisitions and currencies, whose value is neither static nor certain, the currency of ideas is our most certain, bankable bet for the future. And their value will continue to rise as we move into a world increasingly characterised by automation and data-driven decisions. It will be the ideas which reframe accepted wisdoms and provoke a rethink of what is possible that are most valued by society. The power of art to strip away artifice is a compelling notion, one that Salman Rushdie articulated last September in Sydney in his speech, Freedom to Write. Rushdie asked why the dictators and the juntas and the mullahs and the jihadists and the fascist leaders with their goon squads and secret police and bombs and armies and guns are so threatened by artists. It's because, he said, no one can own an idea, not a government, not a regime, not an ayatollah, not even the idea's creator. Once it's out of the bottle, it belongs to everybody and it can go anywhere and do anything. Ultimately, as designers, artists, filmmakers, animators, sculptors, photographers, illustrators, digital media specialists, you'll have to decide how you use the power of your ideas. To that point, I'll close with a memory of a conversation that a starry-eyed younger version of myself had with the American writer Tom Wolfe some decades ago. I had travelled to a hotel in Arizona to hear him talk about his novels, The Electric Kool-Aid Acid Test and The Bonfire of the Vanities. And somehow after the speech, I ran into him in the hotel bar, bought him a drink, and had one of the more memorable conversations of my life. Just before we parted, I asked him what he thought about the unprecedented wealth America was then generating. He fixed me with a stare. "America has never had it so good," he growled. "But good for what?" I wonder, to what end will you turn your talents in the years to come? In a world where ideas are the strongest currency, artists and designers have never had it so good. But good for what? For whatever noble cause you enhance, and whatever benefit you bring to humanity, I wish you great joy in your work, and leave you, myself, optimistic, with no doubt that you will make your creative talents matter. Thank you, congratulations on your graduation, and good luck.
Thank you very much indeed, David. As David said, you may not remember exactly what was said. You perhaps won't remember who said it, but I think what was said are incredibly valuable lessons to take away from here. And in particular, learning from failure is something it takes many of us a long time to do. So David, once again, on behalf of everybody gathered here today, thank you very much indeed for your part in this important ceremony.